So, throughout the month of November, I am talking to men about what I think are sort of uniquely male issues, but that impact us all because men's experience is a global experience and it involves humanity. So, part of this is in the lead up to International Men's Day, which is November 19th, and Movember, which is really a focus on men's health and not only men's physical health, but men's mental health and behavioral health as well. So today I'm talking to Thomas, who I met at Klarna, and we got to do a lot of fun stuff together in bringing new people on board and doing that together, and we had a really good time. And so I wanted to talk to Thomas, and so I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll dive in and chat.
Cool. Thanks a lot for having me, Leah. So my name is Thomas, as you said it. And you said it correctly as well. We met during our combined time at Klarna, where I've been part of the onboarding team, introducing Klarna to all our lovely new hires. That's also my passion. I love getting people on board in a new situation or in a new company, in a new setting. That goes back towards me and my school time, or during my school time, where basically my first 10 school years switched school or classes about 7 times. Always felt a bit left out of the other kids in my classes because it was very tough for me to get into the groups of people, also because I was very tiny and small for my age. So it always had these challenges for me. And that's, I think, where my passion was created, to really provide people with a great experience when they start somewhere new. And just giving them the best experience there and not feeling like I felt like left out, sad at times, get stuck behind.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, no, and I mean, I can say with authority, because I was there often, that I think you're very good at creating that space for energy and excitement and helping people feel like they can, that you hold sort of that space for them to join. So I think that you definitely achieved your goal, at least as far as I could see, in terms of making people feel that way. And I think on that topic, I would love to kind of get your thoughts. I think when we start new jobs or when we have new people joining our teams as leaders, someone's joining the team, I think we often think of that as just in a time of just excitement, like joy, excitement, I'm starting something new. But I would guess that often there are other emotions that show up for people when they're joining. Maybe not even the first day, but in those first weeks, kind of that joining period. What have you seen? What have you seen other people experience?
I mean, emotions that couldn't come up during an onboarding time is definitely fear, sadness, frustration.
Yeah.
Let alone, like, I had my own experience when I joined a new company 10 years after being at Klarna, then joined finally a new place. And on my second day, I remember I sat down with my hiring manager and she asked me how I was doing, how was the first day. And then the second thing she got to was, how often do you think we're going to have a one-on-one? Which just left me speechless in a way. Like, I don't even have an onboarding plan yet. I don't know what you expect from me. Where should I get started? So that's already, for a new hire, not a good situation to find yourself in, because everyone wants to do great. But joining a new company, joining a new workplace, you need that guidance. You need to have someone telling you where to look, whom to meet. And here are your goals that you should accomplish within the next days, and then have a constant communication with your manager about that. So at least like once a week, twice, or bi-weekly.
Yeah, I think what you said is really interesting, because I think, especially in the kind of environments we've worked in, typically dealing with high achievers, people who really want to do well. They want, maybe they're new to a space, but they really want to do well. They've studied, they've done whatever professionally to get to this point. And if we bring them in and we think they're only going to be excited, know exactly what to do, very, very successful, and meanwhile they're experiencing fear, we may miss an opportunity to hold space for them and make them feel welcome and comfortable, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And I think that is really important to remember, that even the toughest tech bros in the world have moments of fear. Right?
And then they need guidance, like even it's just fear of where can I find that information? So, and then having that ready by hand for them. And then of course, also what can really lower the fear. I mean, especially within the tech place, I came a lot of times around the term imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So that is especially true for the tech tech segment or tech field. And how you can battle that or counter that is early on feedback from the manager, like of what you're doing already well. And of course, but also don't forget about the point, what a person can do better.
Yeah.
But then also guide the person of how they can do better, not just tell them, oh, you need to improve your game in that, but then just let them find their own answers. Of course, these parts also come depending on the seniority of a person.
Sure, sure. No, and I think, I mean, I think there is an element of, there's the whole kind of trite cliche that feedback is a gift, but it really is a gift, especially in those beginning times, right? Somebody to say like, hey, you're on the right track, but try this, or, like, you're a little off. We were thinking this might happen. Let's work on this together, right? And so giving people that gift of clarity, right? And I try really hard to lean into Brene Brown saying like clear is kind and unclear is unkind, right? The clearer we are with people, even because I think we sometimes tend to lean into being nice instead of being clear and kind, right? And so how can I be clear with someone so that they have enough information to just pivot in the direction that they need to go, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's so important.
Very important, but then also add to it, you also always do want to challenge your new hires. I mean, that is the other side as well, because then also people will have fun. They feel they are managing something or they're accomplishing something, especially when they get to the points where it really falls into pieces. By you having challenge them. If you don't challenge your new hires, it's also money lost in the end. Then it's just the same way as not having clarity if you don't challenge them. Then they get bored, and then
and then they're like, I gotta go find something to do. I'm bored. Yeah, 100%. No, I think that's super true. Well, let's talk a little bit. I mean, we talked a little bit about those onboarding emotions, but I think, as we talk, as I'm really investigating and having these conversations about men and their own, like, the world of men, right? That's kind of the conversations I'm having, men's health, parenting, all of these things. One of the things that I think is really, one of the things I've always really appreciated about you and know about you, but don't really have the story behind it is, you're a person who is very close to your feelings, and you can express those feelings. You can share how you're feeling, what's going on, you're not afraid to cry. You're not afraid, those are all parts of you that are very forward, right? In terms of they're in front. Not everyone's like that. Not all women are like that. Not all men are like that, certainly, right? And so I'm curious, like, what is it that brings you to that space?
Good question and tough to answer. I mean, like going back to like my childhood. So like I'm coming from a mom that is super sensitive and super sensible.
Yeah.
And then I have a dad on the other side. Grew up with them. They're still together today. So I had a good family and a good childhood. But my dad, I think I never saw him cry and I never saw him having feelings. And these two sides that I got from my mom and my dad, they are battling with each other. And then I do have a little bit of the horns my dad can have and to be impulsive. But on the other side, I have the sensibility and sensitivity of my mom that then also leads very often to that my tears are coming out very quickly. Can be any type of situation, not just sad situations, but like, for example, I remember when I was a football coach in children camps in Czech Republic. So one group of 10 days, they left and I got so close with these kids. And then they left, I stayed, and then the second group would come there. And then, like when that bus of that first group left, like I was crying so much, like seeing these kids leave. And although the second group of kids, they were really awesome kids as well, but I never got as close to emotionally to them as to the first group. So I have these situations, but then of course also like cryness when I'm sad or when I'm in team settings where we are sharing a lot of personal things. Remember back at Klarna, we had this high performing team workshop where in the very first session we had to share very sensitive things from our past and become very personal. And in the end, all of us actually in the team sat there with tears and made me happy to also see other male colleagues share their tears. And that's for me like always a thing like that have been also in Germany, this thing like, men don't cry. If you cry, you're not a man. So like, of course, my first years I've always been hiding them away and felt weird because of crying. But today, also my girlfriend, she appreciates it very much on me that I'm that sensitive, and she just says you're just an empathic person, and that comes with it. So she really appreciates it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. You know, I we did a back in the days at Klarna, we did a domain offsite with all of our, it was just our domain leadership team. And it was, I think at that time I had 13 or 14 teams, right? So it was the product lead and the engineering manager from every team, and then me and Granstrom, right? And Christine from HR, she came and led it. I remember her, Christine
Team.
Andrea Anderson. She came in from Stockholm, and she had been working for Kuhn and came in and led it for us. And I mean, she started the day by having us tell these stories, right? And so it was really fascinating because I think Marcus and I went first, and we spared nothing. Like, we both brought the heat. Like, we brought the most sensitive parts of our story to the room, and we're like, here you go, everyone. And then all these people were, and it was, I think, almost entirely men. I think it was me. There may have been, I mean, Isabel, I think. So I'm like, there might have been two or three women in the room, like
Mm,
max,
mm,
right? In
mm,
this room
mm.
full of like, there was like 28 of us, and it was me and Isabel are the two women I can think of. There might have been another, but that was the two I could think of.
Wow.
And there must have been another product manager or two, um, but I think about that. And what happened was everybody started telling their stories, and everybody cried.
Mm.
And I mean, Carlos Obarca tells us about how his wife died in childbirth, and we're all like, like, we're just like, I mean, everybody's crying. But what happened was, what I know happened from that day or 2 days that we spent together, was that we built these certain bonds that have extended beyond all of us working in the company. Like, there are things
Yep.
that were said that day that different people sort of connected around, and have stayed friends and stayed colleagues and gone to other companies together and done all these things. It also became sort of this joke that anytime I would hold an offsite, they were like, "Are you going to make us cry?" And I was like, "Probably. You should bet on it, and let's see. Let's find out, right?" And we didn't always, right? But I think it was such an open moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? A
It's
lot of
not very easy.
vulnerability,
Mm.
right? And for some of those guys in the room, the first time they'd ever done that, like, cried in front of another group of men, right? So I
But
think
it
it made
lets you, but
it,
as you said, it lets you connect on such a deeper level
yeah,
with one another,
yeah,
which I think is beautiful and should exist more of
yeah,
in the workplace today, because we all can be in our game and have to accomplish, but in the end we're all still humans, and we all battle our own things in our current life or had challenges in our past,
yeah,
and just always hiding back and not sharing this leads also to that the other person doesn't understand why you might react
yeah,
in certain situations as you do react.
yeah,
But having that honest sharing with one another and knowing what triggers the other persons or your colleagues around you in a certain way because of things happened or are happening currently just leads then in the end also to better relationships, but also better productivity in the end.
yeah. No, and I think spot on. Like, there was more the more connection we have, the more willing we are to extend ourselves to help,
Yeah,
right? And say, like, I actually know this person differently, so let me help them, or help them be understood by someone else, right? Like, I think that's just, it's such a, we sort of see it as, I think when we think of like team building and these kinds of exercises, as like, I guess if we need to, and I'm like, no, we must. It's a must, not a,
it's
if we have some time. No, we have to your point, if there's a productivity issue. Yeah,
it's sad to hear that this is always a discussion. Okay, do we really can afford these type of team bonding workshops and stuff? Should we really put our team 3 4 hours not being productive in that sense on that day? 4 5 6 7 8 people, but it's worth it in the end
yeah, yeah. I
because
mean, it's
that team
always,
will have a much better output.
yeah, I 100% agree. I think you always create more space for more productivity and output, and we should always celebrate together, right?
Yeah,
These are things that, like, these are touchstone moments where if you get to know each other well enough in the beginning when you're trying to build something together, that's key. When you celebrate moments together, that's key. There are these things that open up space for us to be human, but also be better builders of things. We build things for people, right?
And then also to add on that, not just celebrate the successes, also celebrate the failures,
Yeah,
because it gives you a chance to learn and to develop.
100%. Yeah,
And that's
100%.
also,
Yeah, I was on a team once where we would give the award for who failed the best this week. And it was the
I had a
best. And we
manager.
loved that award, right? Like it was so much fun to be like, oh no, it was me. I did, right? Like people would argue over who had failed the most that week.
I had a manager once, she said she would pop a bottle of champagne every time she did a bit big, excuse my English, fuck up at
Yeah,
work.
no, you're fine.
No.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's smart. Like, and I feel the same. Like the things that I have failed at have often been the things that have changed my life because I've been like, oh, I learned a key thing in this, right? And it's been really important. So, do you feel like do you feel like given that you are a person who is close to your feelings, that you are empathetic, that you can cry, do you feel like that with other men that you face more judgment or you have more relationships that go deep or a combo of the two?
I would say a combo of the two.
Yeah.
It really depends on the area I am. Like still today, if I like look at my oldest friend from Germany, or longest friend from Germany, he was here just last week, couple of days.
Yeah.
He's the same like my dad. I would never see him cry, or he would never talk about crying. Like I, we were friends when he had the breakup, and he wouldn't talk at all about it. And I need to let my feelings out.
Yeah.
I need to talk about it. So for me, it is more like when I'm with international people, then I can more be the person that I want to be and that I am,
Yeah.
compared to when I'm with German, in that sense, men.
Mm.
Then I need to be more the strong one and a bit more hide my feelings. It's
Yeah.
a weird way, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
No, it's super interesting. One of the things I'm discovering as I have these conversations with men is that um in general, every time this topic comes up, in general, what they say is like, no, my friends and I, we're friends around activity or around shared things we like to do, but we don't talk about important stuff. And the men who have said something have basically said it's too risky, it's too high stakes, and they don't want to be that guy. And I'm like, okay, right? Like, I'm like,
yeah.
come on, dig in, right? Because as women, yeah, okay, there are certainly women who don't, but in general, I crowdsource lots of information from my friends by telling them how I feel,
And I
right?
mean, we also need to go somewhere and let our things get off our chest, and having someone to share is just the best thing you can do. And even if it's like, especially when it's in another man, and I have a very happy relationship, but still like I need my time, especially with my best friend from Sweden, Franco,
Mhm,
who's Chilean in background.
mhm.
But like we've been crying both of each other when we talk to the other one,
Yeah,
and I just need these conversations sometimes. Like
yeah.
to just talk about things that I wouldn't even talk with my partner, because
Okay.
for the fact, sorry to say it, that she is a woman.
Yeah,
So
she
in
does
that
it. It's
sense,
not the
like
same.
I do need that other guy to give me
Yeah,
a better understanding. So
yeah. Well, and I mean, I have a hypothesis. I don't have data to back this up, but I have a hypothesis that part of the problem of violence in the world is that men don't get to they don't get to blow off the steam in the same way that women do. And so they then tend to it gets pent up and they
mhm.
don't get a release. And so then they're emotional and the emotion has to come out in some way, right? And it comes out against yourself or others, right? If you're not an athlete, if you're not, if you don't have some other means to blow off steam, emotionally it gets pent up. And so I have a little hypothesis, a hunch that men don't talk.
Yeah,
So,
you have a point there, because I can relate that again back to my dad and what my mom used to always say like a couple of years back. I mean, it's not at that point today and hopefully never gets there, but that my dad would be the typical person or man that if she would now break up with him, like if they would go into a divorce, he would be falling completely apart. Like he
right.
would probably start drinking,
Yeah.
with that lose his job, lose his house or his living and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they're still together and happy today, but
Yeah.
it's also
But there's
like,
that
Interesting to hear
teeter
that.
totter, like a little balance, right? And I think the thing I'll say about violence, I use the word violence, but violence can be physical violence, it can be emotional violence, it can be violence against ourselves, it can be spiritual violence. You know, it's things that we do to ourselves that harm ourselves or others, right? So I don't necessarily mean only physical aggression. I mean violent language, violent behaviors where your addiction, like those are all violence against ourselves, right? If we're addicted or if we are, you know, harsh and mean to other people or, you know, whatever, we scream, like those things, those, there is an element of violence to all of those things in my mind, right? And they
Yeah,
are, they're an acting out of something that is unspoken, right? So, yeah,
true,
super
true, true.
interesting, super interesting. So, as we start to close, I would love for you to tell me about a role model that you have, you know, you have in your life, known or not unknown, but a role model, and what has been the impact of that person?
Thanks. I mean, there have been a lot of different role models in my life, depending on the time where I lived at. But the biggest one of the biggest impact, I would say, Jurgen Klopp, who
Mhm.
used to be the football manager of my favorite football team, Liverpool.
Yeah,
Um, and it was for me not just like a dream came true, like a German coach takes over my favorite English team, but it's also like his way of leadership and like keeping his not just his football team together, but like the wider team, like all the chefs, the persons that work for the team, like bringing them their food and cleaning their football jerseys and stuff like that. Like how he made everyone, how he gave everyone the feeling of really being part of that bigger picture of that big team.
yeah,
Like even his the players that wouldn't play week in week out and wouldn't play every game, like they still felt that they're contributing to the successes, titles in the end that they won. Even if they just played a couple of minutes throughout the year, but they contributed in training,
yeah,
supporting or getting the other players that are playing week in, week out better by every training session.
yeah.
And just that he created that bond is just for me like
I love
it's the most amazing to see. I remember one of his first titles he got, the the player running crazy in the celebrations when they got the cup on the pitch was a player that hasn't played like more than 100 minutes throughout the whole year,
yeah,
and he was celebrating as nuts because he knew that he had a big part to play,
yeah.
and that's just great for every lead to think of, like
Mhm.
all the people that are part of your team and your wider team, make sure that they are taken care of and that they feel they can contribute to the success and to the bigger picture that you are installing at your company, at your team, wherever.
Yeah, I love that. I love the image of that, and I think, you know, that it's what it reminds me of is, you know, there is a leadership concept that we talk about, like we spend, most leaders spend all of their time on high performers and low performers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We spend so much attention on rock stars and those who are just not getting it done, like failing, right? And everybody in the middle gets left out and left
Yeah,
behind unless you figure out how to spread your time in a way that everybody gets some, right?
the middle part is super important.
Yeah, and the middle part is what's getting it done.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
exactly.
You spend a lot of time on your rock stars because they're bored. And so you're always trying to feed them more information, more stuff to do, more challenges. And you spend a lot of time on the people who aren't getting it done and who are not doing well because you're trying to decide, like, do I need to move them out to something else? Do they need to, how do I motivate them? You know, but
Mhm.
everyone in the middle are the people that are generally getting the job done.
Yeah,
You
no,
need
exactly.
them. And so they have to feel cared for, you know, respected, valued, all of those things. And then to your point, listen, I think if founders and CEOs and C-suite executives understood the value of every player, not just the ones that you think are sunshiny and fancy today, right? But every player and their role, then they would lead that way.
Mhm.
They would lead with the janitor in mind and lead with the, you know, the person who, you know, cleans up the glasses and, you know, they would lead with those people in mind, right? Um, and I just think that it's so essential because, you know, spend a week without those folks in the midst and see what happens, right? Like,
Will be good learnings, I'm sure of it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
probably be astonished by how much they actually get done.
Totally. And I think we sometimes, we get really we love heroes, right? And especially as in kind of the tech world, we have these people that we sort of hold on a pedestal and I'm like, yeah, they're all right.
Mhm.
They had an idea, they had a concept, they had a vision, whatever. That's great. They didn't get it done. Those people very rarely wrote the first line of code or the last, right? And so, there are people getting all of that done. And so really understanding that I think is such an important part of being a leader. So I love that
For
example.
sure, for sure, for sure.
Awesome. This was so much fun. Thank you for coming and talking.
Awesome, thank you. I enjoyed
Yeah.
myself as well. That was awesome.
Yeah. So if you're watching this, you'll notice there's a little QR code in the corner. You can donate to Movember. Movember is an organization that raises awareness for men's health issues like prostate cancer and testicular cancer and other cancers that get diagnosed late. They also raise awareness for mental and behavioral health and suicide awareness for men. So please donate, and we'll raise some money for them in the month of November. So thanks, Thomas.
Please donate. Thank you. Leah.